Hi everyone, this is DDA with the Kanto PR rankings for season 13. It's been a while since I've done a video version of this, but Crick made the slides, so might as well take some actual use out of them. So let's get into a couple of considerations real quick. First things first, I'm going to be rating these teams based just on what the Pokemon themselves on paper can do. There are going to be a lot of good players in here, and most of them will probably win games just from basically diffing alone, even though their team on paper shouldn't be winning. Um, this is Kanto. All of you are good. So, there's not really, too much emphasis on player skill for this. Because if we were to list players based off, like, just the skill themselves, then this would be a completely different ranking. But, regardless, you know, regardless, these are my opinions. If you don't like them, too bad. I know I've got some hot takes sometimes, but none of it is just because for fun. And I'm always down to hear your considerations, especially in the comments or in Discord. Either way, though, this is for fun. So hopefully you like where you stand, or take it as an opportunity to prove me wrong, or prove me right if you like your ranking. Last thing, just want to quickly go over how the ratings are going to go. This should be really self-explanatory, but regardless, S tier teams are basically perfect. There's nothing really else you could ask for. This would be like if you were to pick it off a sheet and didn't even have to draft it. This would be perfect. Eight teams are really, really good. They may have one or two small weaknesses that could be exploited, but are quite minimal in the long run. Um, and can usually be ignored for the majority of battles. B rating teams are also pretty solid, but those issues, maybe there's a couple more of them, or maybe those issues are a little bit more important than just something you can kind of sort of ignore, or just something to keep in mind. Uh, these teams also sometimes have specific matchups that are just like unwinnable. And usually you want to draft a team that doesn't have that problem, but sometimes you can't avoid it. C tier teams have an extremely clear weakness and could highly suggest and highly benefit from a roster change consideration for these teams. And below, I will be considering if you should be making changes or if it's just a play style thing you have to keep in mind. D tier teams are they need some help, and I'm not a fan of them. Just because they have good mons doesn't mean it's a good team. And then obviously, if you get a rating of F tier, I'm not even going to try to help immediately. You're in Kanto, you should not be drafting an F tier team. Spoiler alert: no one's got F tier, but just for in general, that definitely shouldn't happen. If you do see a plus or a minus, it just means you're slightly above in the grade or slightly below. But I didn't want to knock you completely down because there's something on your team that either is the reason why you're still in that grade, or is there's a reason why you haven't progressed. Regardless, let's start with number 16, bottom of the barrel. Unfortunately, will be Bagel, who I do believe was our midway draft dropout, as it was originally Helix. And then he decided that he had some other things he had to do, so Bagel took over. Now, looking at this team, there are some amazing mons in this team and amazing defensive core. I mean, Rotowash Petrarant is really hard to break with Donphin, with helping with hazards as well. An offensive core of Gallade, Meowscarada, and Amorous is also going to be pretty nice. Iron Jug is a pretty solid Terra user, and then Screamtail can also support for that defensive core. Now, the first issue immediately off the bat is that there's only one Terramon on this team. That is just not really acceptable. And even if you were to consider Spite Ups to Terramon, it's not really. Um, Another issue is look at this type chart. I don't think anyone else's team has as miserable of a type chart as this one, as it's a bit rough. I mean, Runawash and Petrarunt are clawing their way to make this chart not as bad as it could be. I mean, your only fire resist, ice resist, flying resists are all Rotom Wash. I do believe your only fairy, uh, and oh yeah, and steel for a wash too. But yeah, but like for fairy, I think you only have Pecharunt for. I think it's another one as well. Oh no, it's another one as well. But regardless, this team definitely needs some desperate changes. I think this team tried to go a little bit too top heavy and crushed and burned specifically. A big thing is that this team would like amazingly benefit from a good steel type, preferably one with pivot. As currently right now, I don't even consider Spite Up to pivot mon. And Jug doesn't really want to run pivot often because you want to run like Meteor Beam, just go in, or Spectre Scarf, which you can run U-turn on those sets, but not always. So that's something to keep in mind. So yeah, yeah, and honestly, Rotom Watch Perpetuon's the only reason this team is an F. It's a bit rough. The Mons are great, and like this team will should definitely at least get some wins, just because the Mons are oppressive enough, and if you play well enough, you can get away with it. But this team is going to need a lot of influence from outplaying, and hoping that they just don't have enough power to power through this. I would definitely reconsider some of these Mons as a lot of them may be good, but they're not all good for here. Um, so moving on, we have Noir's team. Now Noir always drafts a weird fucking team, and he still does well with it. And this is a good example, as this team struggles with speed. That's like one of its first issues here. It does have two really good priority users in Omega Scizor and Raging Bolt, and this team does have good pressure overall. However, its big weaknesses are its special attack. I mean, Dragapult is a special attacker and a physical attacker, but I mean, you have to really run specs to really get the most value out of its special, and then you just have Bolt, and they're both dragon types. So like, it's not even that like you have like different coverage. I mean, they're both dragons. Um, I think this team struggles as well, only having one Terra users. I mean, Rhyperior cannot be your glue to every matchup with Terra. I mean, it's good. I mean, having like lightning immunity, so you can go Terra Water, or just going solid rock and going whatever that works. Weakness policy, rock polish. I mean, there's some stats for sure, but that can't be all this team is. And right now, it really feels like it is with speed plus certain type choices. I mean, having double dragon, no fairy, I think that's just a miss in team building in the first place. I mean, even a Noir team kind of needs at least a fairy. Um, so I would definitely go back to the drawing board on this one. I think there's a couple too many top tier mons that need to get switched around here. And I would start taking a look at that for sure. All right. Next on the board, we have Jiggy Poo. I do love that his logo is just a Feraligatr plushie in MS Paint. Um, I do like that. Jiggy was actually a little bit higher on this list for a bit. That's because at first glance, this team doesn't even seem that bad. But you know, overall, though, when you look a little bit closer, a lot of these mons aren't really scary. Like, they're not really threatening. I mean, his bottom four, like, alone, are not really, like, threatening. They're more so just there, and there could be a problem defensively or, in niche situations. But, I mean, like, it's not like you're having to dedicate a particular mon for Rotom Heat in particular. Moltres Galar Terra can be quite powerful. However, its ability is only going to proc if you get 50%, and in that case, you're just risking death, which, prioritizes, like, rest talk sets, which means that half your move set's already gone. And, Moltres only have a 100 special attack. Like, it's not like a breaker in any way, shape, or form. So, that is something that it has to keep in mind. The rest of the team, I mean, Diance's going to struggle from Scarfers. Shaman, Covert Cloak is going to be a big problem for it. However, Shaman can still punch holes. Same thing with Zera Aura. But just overall, I feel like this team is going to have a bit of a problem with pacing, as he's probably going to have to trade some mons to get some progress going. But like mons like Mew, mons like Moltres, even Zero Aura to an extent, kind of need that setup to be actual threats. Um, and I think this team will kind of struggle finding its groove that form, in that form in general. Moving forward, we have number 13 of Closhi or Closhi, or I don't even know how to pronounce his name half the fucking time. Regardless, the first glaring weakness to me is the fact that this team has more than 60% of its team just weak to fighting. I know that like Savali kind of makes it to where it's more so just 50%, and then even then it can just go fairy, or poison or flying or whatever or ghost to kind of just negate that issue. I just find it funny. Another big issue is just speed in general. Speed can be a big factor in for this team. I mean, you got Darkrai, you got Latios, and that's it. And it's not even this team like has like good priority either. Like the Raging Bolt Mega Scizor team. I mean, this team is just fat. I mean, you got Tangrowth, Clefable, Toxapex. Hoo-wee, a regen core for the stall of ages. Now, if this team wanted to go for like stall plus some like faster speed, there's a team that does it slightly better later, but even then, I don't really like it either. There, metas for when it comes to the stall, you kind of have to have a better um, what's the word? A better support for them as well. Because I mean, like Darkrai itself doesn't really want to pair with fat stall. Darkrai really wants to pair with like chip mons or like mons that are gonna get them into KO range after a nasty plot, or make sure he can kind of clean up the game. Latios can break, so Latios will definitely help with that. Terra Heatran is really good defensively and offensively. Terra Grass Flash Fire is extremely oppressive, and Iron Thorns as well with some Dragon Dance shenanigans and Cork Drive with booster energy can also be a threat. But just right off the bat, like this team's probably gonna have a problem with that. This team should get KOs. I mean, Ursaluna plus Latios is gonna break physically and especially. Darkrai should clean up, and a lot of teams are still gonna have trouble breaking through this Tangrowth, Toxapex, Clefable, Wishbash bullshit. But I think a lot of taunts and a lot of substitutes are gonna go a long way against this team, and I think some people are gonna really abuse the fact that this team's not fast and it could be set up on pretty easily. All right. Coming up next is Blue 24. Now, you would look at those top five and you would ask yourself, how the fuck is this team so low? It's extremely scary early core. Like, really, really scary. This team is also kind of sort of lacking in speed, but not nearly as bad. I mean, you still got Coco, but then it does drop off pretty hard to Coco to Ogre, and then obviously down. And none of those are really Terra users either, so, abuse on that note. The overall biggest problem with this team is just how it's linchpinned into basically being a Skeledirge and Crown only for being special, like, threats. Like Coco can be a threat with like specs and whatnot, but like it's not really hitting too hard. But Crown and Skeledirge is. Issue is that they both share a lot of weaknesses. I mean, they both share ground. They both share ghosts as a weakness for both of them. And yes, Skeledirge can Terra, but Skeledirge Terra isn't a sweeper. It's more so just you have an unaware Terramon, so setup is not really going to be something you can do against this team. However, I think a lot of this team is just going to suffer from the fact that Spadef, weak. Special attack, weak. Speed could be better. And I think that against really good special attack leaning teams, that this team was going to suffer. All right, going on to the next one is Black, the other really stally team that I was talking about before. The difference with this team that the other team didn't have is basically they're very similar. I mean, you have Megalops Spectrier, which is very similar to Darkrai Megalodios with a super fast Mega and a like a one type just kind of like sweeper. The difference here though is that Spectrier is a lot easier to sweep with than Darkrai is. Darkrai has obviously better coverage, and obviously Nasty Plug can win the game, but Spectrier is just going to need to push one button and is faster. and it can just kind of go from there. Also, a really good breaker of Megalopony for the dark and the normal types and the ghost types, really, for Spectra. I think I really love that combination in that sense. Compared to the Dark Ray Megalodios, where they would just kind of suffer from bulky dark types just in general, and bulky fairy types, whereas the Spectre Megalop is very hard to resist in general. Because you're going to want to bring your dark type, you're going to bring your normal type, and both of those are going to really be lumpity fodder. The issue with this team is that its fat is also pretty passive as well. I mean, at least you got Pivot and Vaporeon, um, and you could argue you have Baton Pass with Florges, but you're not really using it. The fact that this team has three Wish Passers is annoying. I know you're not going to use Wish on Latias much anymore because you can just use Florges and or Vaporeon, which Vaporeon would be the best of all of them here. But like regardless, this team is going to really suffer from taunt and sub, just like the last one. If you're able to take care of Lumpany and Spectre, this team loses a lot of its momentum. So, really good fairy types, a really good bulky psychic types for Lumpany would be pretty bad. And then anything that can also beat Spectre. So, like your normal psychics might be a big problem here. Which is what Krookodile is supposed to be. Which is why I like this team a bit better. I just don't think this team needed to be as passive with its walls. Like, I really wish this team had more pivot. I mean, like Lumpany and Spectre could abuse the fuck out of more pivot from your actual passive walls. Which is, I get why that's why you have Terra Articuno to kind of Terra it and make it be the pivot version, but I think you're putting too much emphasis on that. Now, I know this team made some changes. To try to get a little bit more pressure on the board. So we'll see if that helps. But I am not judging the week one changes. I am judging after Grace teams. So that will not be considered for this one. Next we have Geo, Dr. Geo to be specific. This is the beginning of these teams are good. I mean, I don't think any team above this is a bad team, period. I think every team could use some help or has small things that you could change for it, but realistically all these are amazing from here on out. So when it comes to Geo's team, I mean, Terra Weavile, Terra Sinistra, extremely dangerous. A big issue for this team though is that like Terra Sinistra to steal is almost always going to be wanted when you need Tinkaton help. Because Tinkaton alone is your only fairy resist, is your only rock resist, and is your only flying resist. And that's not good. That makes Tinkaton extremely linchpin for this team. And this team is already going to have a couple more issues with the fact that a lot of its top mons kind of share weaknesses. Megalodi, Lando, both sharing that ice weakness. You have Weavile, but that's kind of a fake ice weakness. I mean, Aloe will help, and Aloe Wish Pashing to Tinkaton will extremely help, and Sinistra being able to Terra will also extremely help. But I think that's where this team is going to start to falter. It is that it's really relying on its defensive core to kind of just hold out and slow down the game. Get the T-Waves out from Tinkaton. Get some Scald Burns from Olamola, Scald Burn or a Machagacha Burns from Sinistra, and then you can come and clean up with your Blaziken Endgame or your Weavile Breaker. So that is good. I'm not as harping on the speed because of the webs, and also this team has amazing low tier pivots, or not low tier pivot, but slow, consistent pivot with Alamola. Though when Alamola dies, the consistent pivot's gone. I mean, you really only get Lando left after that, which will be a problem. Another thing of this team is that Latios itself is kind of your main special attacker and special defensive mon. Tinkaton is kind of going to be your secondary, but it's got so many roles and hats to fill that it can't really afford to be that much more. And then, Sinistra is going to be there, but, every time you bring Sinistra, that means you don't get the Weavile pressure, which means your speed's gone. Which, I mean, Weevil doesn't need to Terra very often, but it will probably miss out some KOs without it. Um, yeah, overall though, really solid team. Like I said, all the teams above you are going to be amazing, and I really, really have to nitpick to find a reason to separate them. All right, so next up is Puckbuck's team. I'm gonna be honest. This like these next couple, probably like three or four, you could switch them in and out. I mean, they're so close together. I think I switched this team and Joe's team like 5 times. And I think the only reason why this team edged out the extremely slightly is that is a little bit better defensive synergy. It doesn't rely on one Pokemon for 4 different types. Um, in terms of offensive pressure, though, this team, with Tusk, Koldango, plus Samurai and Hisuian, I mean, hazards are going down and they're staying, which is extremely good for Thundy, extremely good for Lottie, and Mega Beedrill. Like, Beedrill wants hazard control. You have a really, really good 3 spinners, which I think is a really good strategy. I don't think you ever bring Defog on this team because you have all the spinners. And you want to keep hazards down with Samu. You want to keep hazards down with Tusk. And so I think Beedrill is also a really good way to try to abuse people trying to slow the game down and removing them. Goldango is going to be a really good way to keep them on the board. So, all of that together is, I really like it, and I want to see it keep going. But obviously, the speed on this team is going to be still a problem. I mean, it's Mega Beedrill is a bit of an outlier, and then you drop all the way down to Latios, and then all you got is Thundy, and then you go down to Tusk. I mean, you don't even have a 90, which is a bit rough. But overall, it's still pretty solid team. All right, the sniper himself, Rizzo, hitting right in the direct middle of this ranking. Yes, I 100% wanted to rank you lower, because you stole my mom, and I am that petty. But I have a little bit of honor, so I'm not going to do that. Um, I'm not a fan of your only ghost resist being Greninja. It's sort of fake, and having Lele Blacephalon, you really do want a ghost resist, especially with the likes of Dragapult, the likes of Spectrier, Terra Sinistra out there, and just in general, I think you really do need a better answer for that. Um, and I don't think Ren handles that. I don't know where you would fit it exactly, but maybe a Raichu is the idea because I mean, right now Raichu is just trying to fill a speed gap that's pretty fake anyway. Um, you're not going to bring Raichu to most games. Let's be right, real here. Maybe if it was Terra, you could argue, but it's not, so it's not. So really, your speed is 122 to 107, which is not a fun drop. And then it's even more fake because Tentacruel, while it has 100 speed, is never really going to abuse that speed outright offensively. It's mostly going to abuse it defensively with getting fast spins, or with a faster than other tanks abilities and moves. So you really have a 107 to 95, and then you have 395 Mons, and speed's definitely a problem. Only one rocker, and then you have 4 fucking spikers and 3 T spikers. I mean, what the fuck are you doing? I would rather to see at least 2 rockers on this, because this means that Gliscor is your only rocker, and rocks are arguably more important more often. Now, spikes are definitely strong, especially if you get multiple layers, but, rocks are, you know, they hit more often. I mean, it hits the levitating mons. No mon really can avoid rock damage. It really can only negate it or resist it. And with knockoff pressure, you want rocks to be more important. Regardless, though, defensively, Gliscor and Heracross are really your only defensive walls. Everything else kind of crumbles to it. It's actually kind of ridiculous how much everything crumbles to it. And that will kind of be a problem for you, as Gliscor can't defend against everything. It just can't, especially with a 4 times weakness to ice. Heracross, same thing, especially with a 4 times weakness to flying. So these are things you're going to want to keep in mind for that. Yeah, other than that, it's a pretty scary team. I mean, Kieran Black's going to fucking kill everybody. So as long as you can put it into the position that Kieran Black wins, then you're probably fine. Screens plus Kieran Black is a pretty consistent strategy. So, I mean, I don't blame you. All right, next thing is the Rage. And ironically enough, Rage got 7, and his name has the 7-7 on it. So let's just add another 7 to it, shall we? Uh, I love Gouging plus Palafin. That is a deliciously offensive pairing that I love and is a bitch to handle. What is a Mon that's going to break those both? Oh, yeah, water types. Okay, so then what's your water type breaker? Terra Superior. Love what you did with this. Love what you did with that. The speed is a bit rough, but it seems to be a trend. So it looks like you're not really going to be in the same boat. And I know during the draft you were kind of forced to get Mega Arrow, as you were saying that everyone was grabbing your speed. And looking at your team, I'm not surprised. Ironically, Gouging Fire and Jirachi is kind of like a some form of draft core that I'm aware of. Apparently, I mean, yeah, it's a Dragon Steel. I mean, you get a fairy and you add those all together, and that makes sense. But that is kind of how that works. In that vein, in terms of rest of this team, I mean, uh, Jirachi's kind of your only rocker. I mean, let's be real here. When do you want to bring rocks on Aerodactyl? Not often. Not often at all. Um, so, what's the next step on this? And the next step in that would be Jirachi. Jirachi, good rocker. Pretty good. I realize I'm rambling. And I kind of lost my train of thought. Sorry, Rach. The last point I wanted to make was the pivot thing. So, obviously, right now, I don't consider Ampharos a real part of the team. Dragolgi is going to show up sometimes, but it's not like you're bringing Dragolgi just to have another flip turner. So, your pivot on this team is Jirachi and Palafin. And that's it. So, that is something that's going to be a problem for this team. Especially because Ursaluna would love a good pivot, especially a slow one. So, it's going to be rough that you don't really have that for them. And then special tech in general, really leaning hard for Terra Superior and or Ursaluna, or I guess Terra Jagolgi, though adaptability works a little weird with Terra, so keep that in mind. But other than that, pretty solid team. Going on, continue. So for Sean, I did make a small doc mistake, and by me I mean Crook. Accidentally left Wheezing Galar here when he only has Wheezing normally. Um, so I did put the type chart above with the normal Wheezing, and then I also got rid of the two completely fake ass fucking Mons of Grim Alola and Shit Ninja. They're not real Mons. They're not showing up. You're not convincing me otherwise. Um, so with them gone, the type chart actually cleans up a bit. A little bit. I mean, the same thing's the same problem. I mean, still fire type weakness, still a rock type weakness, but it's not as annoying with randomly a Shit Ninja in there. This does mean that Primarina is literally your only dark check, and that could be a problem. If Primarina gets too pressured, it also means that Primarina is you're going to need to keep that in mind. Um, and then I do love the core here though. Torn Treads Drapagos is really nice. I wish you had a little bit more hazard pressure here to really abuse the fact that you have like two of the best rapid spinners in the format. But you don't, which is a little rough. I really wish you did have some more hazards to abuse that. But you have some really good physical pressure here with Arcanine Hisuian, and then you have a lot of special pressure with Terrapagos, Torn, Prim, and Electrode. Mega Cham will also help with that physical pressure, and I think this is a pretty well thought out team. Uh, Overall, though, I think that this will a little bit struggle from the fact of that some of your Mons don't really want to come to every matchup, but they might feel like they have to. So that could be a problem. But otherwise, I like it. All right, moving on to Cam's team. So I had this in the top 3 for a while. And I love how clean the type chart is. I love how you've gotten most of the rolls. Your speed isn't too bad. Nothing above 120, but you can only do what you can do. But there's a couple cracks that starting to show the more I looked at this. I mean, hazard removal is a little bit of a rough one here, as Thundy really doesn't want to run Defog if it can help it, but it can. I mean, you can run Prankster Defog and run more defensive. And then you have Feeny, which almost never wants to run Defog because that gets rid of its own terrain. So then what's the point of its ability if you're getting rid of it? Um, and then there's a little bit of a special attack issue here, as you do have Terra Porygon Z, which is going to be really nice, right? But then you have your other two special attacker mons in Feeny and Thundy, which both of which are going to want to play that utility role sometimes, and kind of figuring out when's going to be offensive, when's going to be defensive might be an issue. But it's a very small issue. Like I was warning before in the earlier in this video, is that I'm having to nitpick here. I mean, this is a lovely team. I mean, Slowking Galar into Mamo sounds like a bitch and a half to deal with. Um, don't sell yourself short. I mean, you're still top five. This is a really solid team. And then we've got my team for this. So for my team here, obviously there's a little bit of bias here. However, I think it works really well. I don't want to really go over it too much. However, I could completely see anywhere from 3 to 6 would make sense. I don't have to be fourth here. It's just more so I think it's a little bit stronger than the other ones. However, the top three I do believe are extremely strong. So that barrier is kind of where I put that. Yeah, so this is my team on that as well. So moving on to the top three. Number three we have is Fact Luigi. So this team is extremely scary. You have Nahagonal, which just got recently unbanned, which is going to be extreme, like a big threat. I mean, it's fast, it hits hard. Yes, it is nasty plot banned for a complex ban, but it isn't in any way, shape, or form lesser because of that. I mean, it still hits really hard. Beast Boost, it can still excel in that round. And then with the Haganol being a really good fairy killer with the poison aspect, its biggest problem is steel types. So what do? You give yourself a Shifu single, which is very weak to fairy, which Nahagol can obviously help with, but it destroys the steel types completely. I mean, it's really hard for most of them to check that. Other steel type killers that you have is you have Terra Sandy Shocks, you also have an Arcanine in the back, so you make sure to pair it with like at least 3 other mons to be able to take care of those nuisances for you. You also have a little bit more speed as well. So like Nahangal isn't your fastest mon. You got Bundle here, which is really nice for those bulky water types, which could be a problem as Nahangal won't really have enough power to immediately blast through them. Nothing super effective. Gonna have to use Dracos and Sludges. So I do like that as well. A good Corviknight in here just for some defensive pivot, which is really nice. Um, I'm not the biggest fan of the fact that you have to mega to get a fairy type on this team, especially with double dragon and or Shifu single. So that is something that I'm not the biggest fan of, but eventually you get fairy. And of course you get Sandy Shanks and Celebi, both of which can Terra. Celebi Terra is an extreme monster. It's a mythical, so tearing a mythical, you get those mythical stats with any type and natural cure to get rid of that horrendous grass psychic typing and getting a lot better. Ironically though, because of your grass weakness or because of your ground weakness, you kind of sort of want to stay grass, or you might even consider flying sometimes as well. But you can probably just go grass half the time just to get rid of that psychic weakness. And then of course Sandy Shocks is a problem both hazards wise and offensively. Overall, I like the team. Spadaf is going to be a big problem. I mean, you don't really have big in the category of defensive bonds in that. Celebi is probably going to have to pick up that weight there with its 100, and that will help. But other than that, I think this is a really solid team. All right, so second to last, we got Rilix here, um, which was number one for a while, honestly. It had the number one spots. It's a super solid team. I love the two Terramons here, Aegislash and Raikou, really strong pressure. I love the Slow King in here to get in Zamazenta, to get in Lando and Raikou for free, and that I really love that aspect. This team is extremely fast while still having some priority mons at lower, which is really nice. I think this biggest problem for this team is that it's going to want to bring 20 mons. I mean, you have a fairy type that's not coming to most games, which is and a dark type that's and poison that's not coming to a lot of games, so that's an issue. Ogerpon, while it's going to be a nice lead very often, it still has that issue of being a really weird niche. You don't have a traditional grass type, which means that your ground weakness is a little off, making it to where both Talon and Lando are your actual ground reasons. And, like all that sense. Aegis Slash, because it's so slow, even with Terra. I mean, to be honest, Aegis Slash doesn't even need to Terra half the time. It'll probably Terra offensive, no, probably defensively into certain matchups. But Raikou is probably going to be your main Terra, and that's the one I'm looking at most. Uh, Slowking and Seismitoad together, I think paired with Talonflame is really nice, and with Aegis Slash as well. Overall, I just really like this team, but I think that that separation between what Manju can bring is going to be a bit of an issue, and that might be something you have to keep in mind. Well, last but not least, the number one team is Delp. Now, when you look at this team, you may not immediately see why. It's just, I really like it. But it just works well together. For some reason, I just really like this. I mean, the oppressive pressure of Iron Val plus Chi and DOS with fast, hard hitting pressure. Immediately, you can clean up with Scizor, with Terra Scizor as well. Dragonites, Dragon Dance can be a problem. Circuitry, if it gets out of hand, can be a problem. You have a really good defensive Mon and Swampert that just really needs to get in and pivot. Same thing with Scizor. Weezing Galar will also help spreading poison and burns around, and also giving you a good checkpoint for a ground resist that isn't weak to ice, which will be helpful, especially for GU, for those fighting types as well. Fighting and ground will be a problem, and Weezing can take care of that. I realize that this team definitely has some shortfalls. Its speed could use a little help with the 100 to 83 is a really rough drop. And then the fact that, other than DOS, it doesn't really have anything faster than Val. Um, I understand those are big weaknesses, and I understand as well that Chiyu is kind of just like Gran is a little bit of a fake Dark Resist. However, it does have a fucking 120 SPDF, so I mean, Ghost is not as bad as like Greninja, for example. But overall, I think this team has a lot of potential to hit really hard and go really fast. It just depends on how it's used. I think this has the most potential on paper. I think. I mean, that's definitely biased, and I think it's a hard take. And I threw this, I switched this around like 5 different times. I would say the top five are arguably extremely switchable, even top six. But this is what I ended up in the end. So I hope you guys like this. I definitely rambled a bit, and I definitely could have given more analysis on a lot of different teams. But, it's late. I'm already doing this a day late. But I hope you guys like this. If you guys have any questions or concerns, or even just any insights or anything you liked, please put it down in the comments below. Um, Go ahead and subscribe if you'd like. I don't really know how many more videos I'll be doing soon, but it is a plan to eventually bring this back up when I get the motivation. But either way, thank you very much, and have a good day, guys. DDA signing out.